The healer's report sat on Alpha Ronan's desk like an accusation. 5 pages detailing the injuries his son had inflicted over the past month. 3 nannies bitten badly enough to require stitches. 2 guards with deep scratches that would scar. 1 unfortunate tutor who'd lost part of his ear when he'd tried to force the boy to sit still for lessons. Ronan rubbed his face with both hands, exhaustion weighing on him like physical chains. His son was 7 years old and completely, utterly feral. Not metaphorically difficult or poorly behaved, truly feral, like a wild animal that had never learned to trust humans, which in a sense was exactly what Liam had become. "We can't keep doing this," Beta Marcus said from his position by the window. "The staff is terrified of him. Half of them refuse to go near him at all, and the ones who do try end up in the healer's wing." "I know." Ronan's voice was flat with defeat. "There are facilities," Marcus continued carefully, "places that specialize in wolves with severe behavioral issues. They might be better equipped. You're suggesting I institutionalize my son?" Ronan looked up, meeting his Beta's eyes. "Lock him away because he's too damaged to live in normal society. I'm suggesting we get him help we can't provide here. Professional help from people who understand trauma. And he's 7 years old, Marcus. He's a child who watched his mother torn apart by rogues while he hid under a table. A child who spent 3 days alone with her body before we found him. Of course he bites. Of course he's violent. He thinks the whole world is dangerous. Because for him, it has been." Marcus's expression softened. "No one blames you for what happened. You were away on pack business. You couldn't have known the rogues would attack your home specifically. But Ronan, you also can't let guilt keep you from making hard decisions. Liam needs help. You can't give him." Before Ronan could respond, shouting erupted from somewhere in the palace. A woman's voice, high and frightened, followed by the distinctive snarl of a child in full defensive mode, then running footsteps getting louder. Ronan was already moving toward the door when it burst open. One of the housekeepers, young, maybe 20, stumbled through, her uniform torn and blood dripping from scratches on her arm. Behind her, crouched low and ready to spring, was Liam. The boy looked more animal than human in that moment. His dark hair was wild, uncombed for days despite multiple attempts to groom him. His gray eyes, so like Ronan's own, were wide and unfocused, seeing threats everywhere. His lips were pulled back in a snarl that showed teeth, and his hands were curled into claws, nails caked with what might have been dirt or blood, or both. "I'm sorry, Alpha," the housekeeper gasped. "I was just trying to bring him lunch, and he get her to the healer," Ronan ordered Marcus, his attention fixed on his son. "I'll handle this." Marcus ushered the injured woman out, and suddenly it was just Ronan and Liam in the office. Father and son staring at each other across an impossible distance that had nothing to do with the physical space between them. "Liam," Ronan said quietly, making his voice as gentle and non-threatening as possible. "It's just me. You're safe." Liam's snarl deepened. He didn't recognize safe, didn't understand that his father would never hurt him. 3 years of careful rebuilding, and Ronan still couldn't get through the walls his son had built. "I'm going to sit down now," Ronan said, suiting action to words. "See, I'm not a threat. I'm just sitting here." Liam watched him with the weariness of a cornered animal. His body stayed tense, ready to fight or flee at the first sign of danger. But he didn't attack, which was something. Small victories were all Ronan had these days. They stayed like that for nearly an hour, Ronan sitting calmly at his desk, Liam gradually relaxing his aggressive posture, but never fully dropping his guard. Eventually, the boy slunk to a corner of the room and curled up there, still watching his father, but no longer actively threatening. It was as close to peace as they ever got. The knock at the door made Liam tense again, but it was only Marcus returning. The housekeeper is fine. Superficial scratches, nothing that won't heal. But Ronan, he paused, glancing at Liam. We need to find a solution. This can't continue. I know, Ronan said again, because what else could he say? Marcus was right. They couldn't continue like this. But the thought of sending Liam away, of admitting defeat, and locking his son in some facility where he'd be even more isolated and afraid, it felt like betrayal, like giving up on the one piece of his mate he had left. There's someone, Marcus said slowly. I didn't mention it before because it seemed like a long shot, but given the situation, who? An Omega, low-ranked, keeps to herself. She works in the gardens mostly, sometimes helps in the kitchens. The staff say she's quiet, reliable, doesn't cause trouble. Ronan frowned. Why would a garden Omega be relevant to Liam's situation? Because she's good with injured animals. The head gardener says she has a gift for calming creatures that are hurt or frightened. Last winter, she rehabilitated a wolf that had been caught in a trap. Thing was half mad with pain and fear. Tried to bite anyone who came near, but she gentled it somehow. Got it to trust her enough to let her treat its wounds. My son isn't an injured animal, Marcus, isn't he? Marcus's voice was soft but firm. Ronan, I know that's hard to hear, but right now, Liam is operating on pure survival instinct. He's not a boy having tantrums. He's a wounded creature lashing out at anything that comes too close. Maybe what he needs isn't another trained professional with theories about trauma. Maybe he needs someone who understands wounded things. Ronan wanted to argue, wanted to insist his son deserved better than being treated like a feral animal. But when he looked at Liam still curled in the corner with his teeth bared and his eyes wild, he couldn't find the words to deny Marcus's assessment. What's her name? He asked finally. Aria. She's about 25, been with the pack for 5 years. Quiet, as I said, keeps her head down. There are rumors about her past, something about scars, about trauma in her previous pack, but no one knows details because she doesn't talk about it. If she's that damaged herself, why would she be equipped to help Liam? Sometimes the wounded understand each other better than the whole ever could. Marcus moved toward the door. I'll send for her. You can decide after meeting her whether to even try this. Aria arrived an hour later, escorted by a servant who left immediately after showing her into Ronan's office. She kept her eyes down, her posture submissive, textbook Omega behavior, the kind that usually made Ronan uncomfortable because it spoke of too many years being taught she was lesser. Your Aria? He asked. Yes, Alpha. Her voice was soft, carefully neutral. Look at me, please. She raised her eyes, and Ronan understood immediately what the rumors about scars had meant. The left side of her face was marked with old burn scars, tissue that had healed, but would never look quite right. The scarring extended down her neck and disappeared under the collar of her plain dress, suggesting the damage was extensive. But it was her eyes that held his attention. Brown, warm, and completely unafraid. Despite her submissive posture, she'd learned to play the role of meek Omega. But underneath there was strength, steel wrapped in softness. My beta tells me you're good with injured animals, Ronan said. I do what I can, Alpha. Her gaze flickered briefly to the corner where Liam still crouched, watching this new person with suspicious eyes. Is that your son? Yes. His name is Liam. He's having difficulties. I heard he bites. No judgment in her voice, just statement of fact. He does badly. Multiple staff members have been injured, I'm running out of options, and my beta suggested you might be able to help." Arya was quiet for a moment, her attention fully on Liam now. The boy snarled at her, a warning to stay back. But unlike everyone else who'd been in this room, Arya didn't flinch or step away. She simply looked at him with calm assessment, like she was trying to understand what she was seeing. "May I approach him?" she asked. "That's not advisable. He will bite you." "I understand the risk. May I try anyway?" Ronan should say no. Every instinct screamed that he shouldn't let this Omega near his son, that she'd just become another victim, another injury report on his desk. But something in her eyes, that calm certainty, made him nod on your own head. "Don't say I didn't warn you." Arya moved slowly, each step deliberate and obvious. She didn't try to hide her approach or make herself small. She simply walked toward Liam with the same calm she'd shown since entering the room. Liam's snarl increased in volume. His body tensed, preparing to spring. Everyone else who gotten this close had either run or tried to grab him, which only made his violence worse. But Arya didn't neither. She stopped about 6 ton away, close enough to be present, but far enough to not be an immediate threat, and sat down on the floor. Just sat, not approaching further, not speaking, not trying to coax or command, just sitting, making herself available without demanding anything. Liam stared at her, clearly confused. This wasn't how people usually reacted to his aggression. They either ran or fought back. They didn't sit calmly and wait. Arya began humming quietly, almost under her breath, a melody that sounded like a lullaby. Her eyes stayed on Liam, but her posture remained relaxed, unthreatening. She wasn't performing or trying to manipulate him. She was simply being present, offering her presence without strings attached. 10 minutes passed, 15. Ronan barely breathed, watching this impossible scene unfold. Liam's snarl gradually faded. His body relaxed fractionally, tension easing from muscles that had been locked tight for years. He didn't approach Arya, but he stopped treating her like a threat. Progress. Actual visible progress. After years of nothing but setbacks. After 20 minutes, Arya stopped humming. "Hello, Liam," she said softly. "My name is Arya. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to grab you or force you to do anything you don't want to do. I'm just going to sit here if that's okay with you." Liam didn't respond. He hadn't spoken a word since his mother's death, but his eyes tracked her face, studying her scars with the same intensity she'd studied his defensive posture. Arya raised her hand slowly, drawing his attention to her arm. Her sleeve fell back, revealing more scars. Burns, page 4, that twisted the skin, marks that spoke of terrible pain. "I got hurt, too," she said simply. "A long time ago. It scared me so much that I stopped trusting anyone. I thought if I let people close, they'd hurt me again." She lowered her arm. "But I learned something. Being scared is okay. Being careful is smart. But being alone all the time, that's its own kind of hurt. And sometimes when you're very careful and very slow, you can find people who won't hurt you, people who understand what it's like to be scared." Liam's hand moved just slightly, reaching toward her. Not all the way, just a tentative extension of fingers that suggested maybe possibly he might want to touch to verify that she was real, that this gentle presence wasn't a trick. Arya stayed perfectly still, letting him make the choice. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Liam crawled forward, just a foot, but closer than he'd willingly been to anyone in 3 years. "That's good," Arya softly. "You're very brave." Another foot closer. Liam's hand extended further, trembling with the effort of overcoming years of fear and defensive instinct. His fingers touched Arya's scarred arm just barely, testing. When she didn't grab him or hurt him, he pressed his palm flat against her skin. Arya smiled, and it transformed her face. The scars didn't disappear, but they became secondary to the warmth and genuine joy in her expression. "Hello," she said again. "It's nice to meet you, Liam." Ronan watched in stunned silence as his son, his feral, violent, unreachable son, leaned against this scarred Omega and closed his eyes. The tension that had held Liam's small body rigid for years melted away, and for the first time since his mother's death, the boy looked peaceful. "How did you do that?" Ronan asked, his voice rough with emotion. Arya looked up at him, still holding perfectly still, so as not to disturb Liam. "I didn't do anything except let him see that I understand. Sometimes wounded creatures just need to know they're not alone in their pain. Can you help him? Really help him? I mean, not just this moment," but Ronan gestured helplessly. "Everything." "Can you help him heal?" "Don't know, Arya, honestly. Healing takes time, and there are no guarantees, but I can try if you'll let me. What would you need? Time with him every day if possible. Somewhere quiet where he feels safe and patience. Lots of patience. Progress won't be quick or linear. There will be setbacks. Whatever you need, you have it." Ronan's voice was firm. "Name your terms. Salary, position, accommodations, anything. I don't want payment for this, Arya, but I would like a space to work with him. The gardens, maybe. Somewhere with room to move, but walls for security. And I'd need everyone else to stay away during our sessions. No observers, no interruptions, just him and me. Done. The private garden attached to the family wing. It's secure, private, and it has everything you'd need. When can you start? Now, if you'd like." Arya's hand moved slowly until it rested on Liam's matted hair. The boy didn't flinch or pull away, though he might need some time to adjust to the idea of moving to a new space. But Liam surprised them both. He stood, keeping one hand fisted in Ai's dress, and looked at his father. Really looked, making eye contact for the first time in months. There was still fear in his gray eyes, but underneath it was something new, something that might have been hope. "I'll show you both to the garden," Ronan said, moving slowly so as not to startle his son. "And Arya, thank you. Whatever happens next, thank you for giving me this moment." Arya smiled. "Don't thank me yet. We've got a long road ahead." The private garden was everything Ronan had promised. A walled space full of flowering plants and fruit trees, with a small fountain in the center, and stone benches scattered throughout. It was beautiful and peaceful, and most importantly, it was secure. No one could enter without going through the family wing, which meant complete privacy. Liam explored the space with cautious interest, never straying far from Arya. She let him investigate at his own pace, offering quiet commentary about the plants, but never pushing him to respond or engage. "Those are roses," she said when he sniffed at a bush. "They smell nice, but the thorns are sharp. You have to be careful." Liam touched a thorn, testing its sharpness with the same careful deliberation he'd shown when touching her arm. Then he looked at her, and Arya could see the question in his eyes, even though he didn't speak it aloud. "I got my scars from fire," she said, answering what he hadn't asked. "My old pack. They didn't like Omegas who spoke up or had opinions, so they taught me a lesson about knowing my place." She pulled up her sleeve fully, showing the extent of the damage. The burns traveled from her hand all the way past her elbow, twisting the skin into patterns of healed tissue. It hurt very badly. For a long time I wished I died instead of surviving. But then I realized something. They hurt my body, but they didn't break my spirit. And as long as my spirit was whole, I could keep going. Liam's hand reached out and traced one of the scars, his touch feather-light. His expression was solemn, understanding in a way that most adults never managed. He knew about pain, about wounds that went deeper than skin. "Your spirit is whole too," Arya said softly. "I can see it. You're hurt and scared, and that's okay. But underneath all that fear, you're still you, still brave, still strong. We just have to remind you of that." They spent 3 hours in the garden that first day. Arya didn't try to teach or train or fix anything. She simply existed alongside Liam, offering commentary about the plants and flowers, humming her lullabies when he seemed agitated, and letting him investigate her scars whenever he felt the need to verify she was real and safe. When evening came, and Ronan appeared to collect his son for dinner, he found them sitting by the fountain. Liam's head rested against Arya's shoulder, and both of them were watching birds splash in the water. It was the most relaxed Ronan had seen his son since before his mate's death. "How did it go?" he asked quietly. "We're taking it slow," Arya replied, "but I think we understand each other." Liam lifted his head and looked at his father. Then, deliberately, he reached for Ronan's hand, not with violence or defense, but with tentative trust. The first gesture of affection he'd offered in 3 years. Ronan's vision blurred with tears. He took his son's hand carefully, like holding something infinitely precious and fragile. "I'm here," he said. "I'm always here, Liam. And now Arya is here too. We're going to help you feel safe again." Liam didn't respond with words, but he squeezed his father's hand just once, and that small gesture felt like a miracle. Over the following weeks, Arya arrived in the garden every morning and stayed until evening. She brought books and read aloud, though Liam never sat still enough to follow the stories. She brought simple crafts and showed him how to weave grass into rough baskets. She brought food and ate where he could see her, proving it was safe and untainted. And slowly, incrementally, Liam began to relax his guard. He stopped snarling when she approached. He started following her around the garden, staying close like a shadow. He let her touch his hair, his face, his hands, gentle touches that proved not all physical contact was violent. He didn't speak, but he communicated in other ways, tugging on her dress when he wanted attention, bringing her flowers he'd picked, offering them with the solemnity of a great gift, sitting close enough that their shoulders touched, seeking her presence without having to ask for it. And through it all, Arya remained patient and steady. When Liam had bad days and reverted to growling at everyone, including her, she simply sat at a distance and hummed until he calmed. When he destroyed the crafts they'd made in fits of frustration, she helped him clean up without judgment or anger. When he woke from nightmares screaming, yes, he'd started sleeping in the garden some afternoons, curled up with his head in her lap. She held him until the terror passed. The pack staff noticed the change. They whispered about the scarred Omega who'd tamed the feral prince, about the boy who followed her everywhere, like an imprinted duckling. Some were grateful. Anything that stopped Liam from biting was welcome. Others were suspicious, wondering what power this quiet Omega held over the Alpha's son. But Ronan saw the truth. Arya wasn't controlling Liam or manipulating him. She was simply being what he needed, a safe harbor in a world that had proven dangerous. A reminder that not all people would hurt him. A bridge back to trust and connection. 2 months after that first day in the garden, Ronan found them working together on a flower bed. Liam was digging while Arya planted seedlings, and they moved with the synchronized ease of people who'd learned to understand each other without words. "He seems better," Ronan observed, keeping his distance so as not to disrupt their work. "He is better," Arya confirmed. "Still healing, still scared, but better. Because of you. Because he decided to try trusting again. I just provided a safe space for him to practice." Arya looked up from her planting. "He asks about you, you know." Ronan's breath caught. "He asks with words." "No, not yet. But he points to the palace where your office is, draws pictures in the dirt of a tall man with kind eyes. He's trying to rebuild the connection with you. He just needs it to go slowly." "I'll go as slow as he needs." Ronan's voice was rough. "Whatever it takes, then keep doing what you've been doing. Keep being patient. Keep being present. He'll come to you when he's ready." And he did. 3 weeks later at dinner, Arya had been invited to dine with them, as had become custom. Liam slid off his chair and crossed to where Ronan sat at the head of the table. The boy's hand tugged on Ronan's sleeve, and when the Alpha looked down, Liam lifted his arms. The universal gesture for pick-me-up. Ronan's heart stuttered. He lifted his son carefully, settling him on his lap, and Liam immediately curled against his chest with a content sigh. The first time in 3 years, his son had sought comfort from him willingly. Ronan looked at Arya over Liam's head, and she smiled with such warmth and genuine joy that something shifted in his chest. This Omega, who'd appeared in his life like an answer to a prayer he hadn't known how to voice, who'd taken his broken, frightened son and gently, patiently helped him heal, who'd somehow, in the process of saving Liam, started to save Ronan too. He'd been so focused on his son's recovery that he hadn't noticed how much lighter he felt these days, how he looked forward to the evenings when Arya would join them for dinner, bringing stories about Liam's progress and small observations that showed how well she understood his son, how he'd started seeking her out during the day, just to see her smile or hear her quiet laugh. It was inappropriate, probably. She was Omega, low-ranked, employed to help his son, and he was Alpha, still mourning his mate even 3 years after her death. But watching Arya gently stroke Liam's hair while the boy dozed against Ronan's chest, he couldn't deny what he felt. Gratitude, yes, but also affection, respect, and something that felt dangerously like the beginning of love. Marcus noticed, of course. His beta had eyes like a hawk and a tendency to speak his mind, even when Ronan didn't want to hear it. "You care about her," Marcus said one afternoon, finding Ronan watching Arya and Liam through the garden window. "The Omega Arya. She's helping my son heal. Of course, I care about her. That's not what I mean, and you know it." Marcus moved to stand beside him. "You look at her the way you used to look at Elena, like she's the sun, and you're trying to figure out how to get closer without burning." Ronan's jaw tightened. "Elena's been dead 3 years. I'm allowed to care about someone else. I'm not saying you're not. I'm saying you need to be careful. Arya is Omega, and the pack has strict rules about alphas and omegas. If you pursue this, there will be consequences." "What consequences?" "I'm Alpha. I make the rules. You're Alpha. Yes, but you're not a tyrant. The council has a say in matters of succession and leadership, and if they think you're being controlled or manipulated by an Omega, they'll challenge your authority." Marcus's voice softened. "I'm not trying to be cruel, Ronan. I'm trying to protect you and her, because if the council decides she's a problem, they won't hesitate to remove her." "They can try," Ronan said, his voice hard, "but I'll fight them on this. Arya has done more for my son and for me than anyone else in this pack. I won't let them drive her away because of outdated prejudices about omega worth. Then be smart about it. Take your time. Make sure what you're feeling is real and not just gratitude mixed with loneliness. And if it is real, build a case that even the council can't argue with. Show them that Arya isn't just some omega who caught your eye. Show them she's valuable, essential even. Give them no grounds to claim she's manipulating you. It was good advice, and Ronan knew it. But it was also torture because every day he spent watching Arya with Liam, seeing her patience and kindness and strength only made his feelings stronger. 4 months after Arya had started working with Liam, the boy spoke his first words. They were in the garden as always. Arya was reading a story about a brave knight, and Liam was sprawled in the grass beside her, half listening and half watching butterflies. Ronan had started joining them in the evenings, sitting quietly so as not to disrupt their routine, but wanting to be part of these precious moments. Arya reached the part where the knight rescued a princess from a tower, and Liam sat up abruptly. His mouth opened, closed, opened again, and then, rusty from disuse, but unmistakable, a single word, safe. Arya's hand stilled on the book. Ronan stopped breathing. They both stared at Liam, who was looking at Arya with solemn gray eyes. Safe, he repeated, pointing to her, then to Ronan. Safe. Arya sat down the book with trembling hands. Yes, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You're safe with me, with your papa. You're safe, Liam. Liam nodded, satisfied that they understood. Then he curled up with his head in Arya's lap and went back to watching butterflies, as if he hadn't just performed a miracle. Ronan met Arya's eyes across the garden and saw his own wonder and joy reflected there. His son had spoken. After 3 years of silence, of being trapped in his own fear, Liam had found his voice. That night, after Liam was asleep in his room, another milestone, sleeping in his own bed instead of only in the garden, Ronan found Arya in the library. She was returning the book they'd been reading, and she looked up when he entered. You should be celebrating, she said with a small smile. Your son spoke today. I wanted to celebrate with you, Ronan said, since you're the one who made it possible. Liam made it possible. I just provided the space. You always say that. Always give the credit to everyone else. But Arya, this was you, your patience, your understanding, your refusal to give up on a child everyone else had written off. Ronan moved closer. You saved him. You saved us both. Arya ducked her head, uncomfortable with praise. I only did what anyone would. No. Ronan's voice was firm. Not anyone. Most people would have run the first time he snarled at them. Most people would have given up after the first setback, but you stayed. You believed in him when no one else did. That's not what anyone would do. That's exceptional. I thank you, Alpha. Ronan, he corrected. Please, just Ronan. At least when it's just us. Arya looked up at that, surprise flickering across her face. That wouldn't be appropriate. I don't care about appropriate. Ronan took another step closer until they were almost touching. Arya, I need to tell you something. These past months, watching you with Liam, seeing your kindness and strength and patience, I've developed feelings for you. Strong feelings. Arya's eyes went wide. Alpha Ronan, you don't mean that. You're grateful. That's all. Grateful I helped your son. I am grateful, but that's not what this is. Ronan reached out slowly, giving her time to step back if she wanted. When she didn't move, he cupped her scarred cheek with gentle fingers. I'm falling in love with you, Arya. Have been for weeks now. And I hope you might feel something for me, too. It doesn't matter what I feel, Arya whispered. You're Alpha. I'm Omega. The pack would never accept. The pack will accept what I tell them to accept. You're not just any Omega, Arya. You're the woman who saved my son, who brought light back into our lives, who has every quality I could want in a mate and partner. Arya's breath hitched. Mate, eventually if you'll have me. I know this is sudden and I'm not asking for an answer now, but I want you to know my intentions. I want to court you properly, show you that what I feel is real, not just gratitude or loneliness. Ronan's thumb traced the line of her scar, his touch reverent. You're beautiful, Arya. All of you, scars included. And if you give me a chance, I'll spend every day proving you made the right choice. Tears spilled down Arya's cheeks. I'm afraid, she admitted my last pack. They hurt me because I spoke up, because I dared to have opinions. They taught me that wanting things, reaching for happiness, only leads to pain. Then let me teach you something different, Ronan said softly. Let me show you that not all packs are cruel, that sometimes reaching for happiness actually brings it, that you deserve to be cherished, not punished. Arya closed her eyes, and for a moment Ronan thought she'd refuse, but then she leaned into his touch, just slightly, and whispered, I feel it too, the feelings. I've been trying not to, but I do. Then let me court you. Let me prove this is real. Arya opened her eyes and looked at him with a mixture of hope and fear. The council won't approve. They'll say I'm manipulating you, that I'm not worthy. Then we'll prove them wrong together. Ronan smiled. Besides, I have an advantage. My son has claimed you as his. And in pack law, the alpha heir's choice carries weight. If Liam wants you as part of our family, and he clearly does, the council will have a hard time arguing. A shaky laugh escaped Arya. You'd use your son's attachment to me as political leverage. I'd use every tool available to keep you in my life. Is that so wrong? It's actually kind of sweet, in a manipulative, politically strategic way. I'll take it. Ronan pressed a kiss to her forehead, gentle and chaste. So, can I court you, Arya? Will you give us a chance? Arya took a shaky breath. Then she nodded. Yes, but slowly. I need to go slowly. As slow as you need, Ronan promised. We have time. The courtship that followed was unlike anything Arya had experienced. Ronan courted her with the careful patience he'd learned from watching her with Liam. Slowly, gently, always giving her space to retreat if she needed it. He brought her flowers from the garden, selecting the ones Liam helped him pick. He invited her to walk with him through the palace grounds, showing her parts of his territory she'd never seen. He asked about her day, her thoughts, her dreams for the future, and he listened, really listened to everything she said. The pack noticed, of course. Servants whispered about the alpha who looked at the scarred Omega like she hung the moon. Warriors muttered about inappropriate attachments and Omega manipulation. The council members watched with disapproving eyes, waiting for an opportunity to intervene. But Ronan didn't care. He made his intentions clear. Arya was under his protection, his chosen companion, and anyone who had a problem with that could bring it to him directly. Liam, meanwhile, thrived. With Arya's continued support and Ronan's increasing presence, the boy blossomed. He started speaking more, short sentences at first, but gradually becoming more complex. He stopped biting entirely, his aggression replaced by cautious curiosity about the world. He even began attending lessons again, as long as Arya sat nearby to provide comfort when things got overwhelming. 6 months after Arya had first entered their lives, the council demanded a formal meeting. Ronan had been expecting it, had prepared for it, but that didn't make it any less daunting. They're going to challenge your decision to court her. Marcus warned the night before the meeting. They'll say she's Omega, lowborn, damaged. They'll claim she's manipulating you through your son. Let them try, Ronan said grimly. I have evidence of everything she's accomplished. Reports from the healers about Liam's progress, testimonials from the staff about her character, and Liam himself, who will tell anyone who asks that Arya is essential to his well-being. They'll still try to discredit her, find any weakness they can exploit. Then I'll defend her. That's what mates do. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You've decided then to make her your mate. I've decided I want to if she'll have me. Ronan's expression softened. She's everything I could want, Marcus. Kind, strong, patient. She loves my son like he's her own, and she sees past my title to the man underneath. How could I not want that? Then fight for her, Marcus said simply, because the council is going to make you work for this. The council meeting took place in the great hall with all 12 council members seated in a semicircle facing Ronan's throne. Arya wasn't allowed to attend. This was pack business for ranked members only. But Ronan could feel her anxiety through the bond they'd been building. Alpha Ronan Council Elder Margaret began, her voice cold and formal. We're here to discuss your recent attachment to the Omega area. There are concerns about the appropriateness of this relationship. What concerns? Ronan kept his voice level, refusing to rise to the bait. She's Omega, Margaret said bluntly. Low-ranked, with a traumatic past that suggests instability. And yet you've elevated her to a position of significant influence within your household, given her unprecedented access to your heir, and now you're courting her publicly. This raises questions about your judgment. My judgment is sound. Ronan said has done more for my son's recovery than any professional we hired. She's proven herself patient, skilled, and utterly devoted to Liam's well-being. What exactly about that suggests poor judgment on my part? The concern, another council member interjected, is that she may be using your son to manipulate you, gaining your trust through the child in order to elevate her own position. Ronan's hands clenched on the arms of his throne. That's an insulting accusation with no basis, in fact, isn't it? Margaret pulled out a folder. We've done some research into Arya's background. Her previous pack cast her out after she was burned for insubordination and willful defiance of pack hierarchy. That doesn't sound like someone who respects authority or knows her place. It sounds like someone who was tortured for having opinions, Ronan said, his voice hard. And frankly, any pack that would burn an Omega for speaking up doesn't deserve to exist. The fact that Arya survived that and remained kind and compassionate speaks to her strength, not her instability. Or it speaks to her skill at manipulation, Margaret countered. A wolf who's learned to survive by any means necessary might not hesitate to use a traumatized child to secure her position. Enough. Ronan stood, and the force of his alpha command filled the hall. I will not sit here and listen to you impugn the character of a woman who has done nothing but help this pack. Arya's past is one of survival, yes, but it's also one of remarkable compassion. Despite being tortured and cast out, she didn't become bitter or cruel. She became someone who helps wounded creatures heal. That's not manipulation. That's extraordinary empathy. Your son is extraordinarily attached to her. Another council member said, what happens if this courtship ends? If you decide she's not suitable after all, the trauma of losing her could set his recovery back years. Then I won't lose her, Ronan said simply. I intend to make Arya my mate, to bind her to this pack permanently, give her every protection and privilege that comes with being Luna. And before you object, let me be very clear. This decision is mine to make. As Alpha, I have the right to choose my own mate." "You have that right," Margaret agreed. "But we have the right to question whether your choice is sound, whether it serves the pack's best interests. How does it not serve the pack's interest to have a Luna who's proven herself compassionate, skilled at handling trauma, and utterly devoted to the well-being of the next generation? How does it harm us to elevate someone who's shown nothing but loyalty and dedication?" "She's Omega," Margaret repeated as if that explained everything. "And I'm Alpha," Ronan shot back, "which means my Omega will be Luna with all the power and respect that position entails. If you have a problem with that, take it up with pack law, but you'll find nothing there that prohibits an Alpha from mating an Omega. There's precedent," another council member said quietly. This was Thomas, one of the more reasonable members. "Historical records show multiple cases of Alphas mating Omegas. It's uncommon but not forbidden. And in each case," Margaret interjected, "the pack suffered weak leadership, poor decisions, chaos. Correlation isn't causation," Thomas argued. "Those packs had other problems beyond the rank of their Luna. And frankly, some of our strongest historical packs had Omega Lunas who brought innovation and compassion to leadership." The debate raged for another hour, council members arguing back and forth about precedent and propriety and pack stability. Ronan let them talk, knowing that they needed to air their concerns before they could accept his decision. Finally, Margaret called for order. "We need to vote. All in favor of blocking the Alpha's courtship of the Omega Aria, raise your hand." 5 hands went up, not enough for a majority, but enough to show significant opposition. All opposed, 7 hands, including Thomas's. The courtship could continue. "Very well," Margaret said stiffly. "The council acknowledges the Alpha's right to court Aria. However, we reserve the right to revisit this decision if circumstances change or if evidence of manipulation emerges." "Noted," Ronan said. "Is there anything else?" "Just this." Margaret's expression was cold. "You're risking your son's stability and the pack's respect for a woman who may not be worth it. I hope for all our sakes that you're right about her." "I am," Ronan said with complete certainty, "and I'll prove it to all of you." After the meeting, he went immediately to find Aria. She was in the garden with Liam, reading as always, but when she saw his face, she set the book aside. "How bad was it?" she asked quietly, not wanting to alarm Liam. "About as expected. They voted to allow the courtship to continue, but barely. 5 opposed, 7 in favor. Aria's face fell. 5 council members hate me. 5 council members don't know you yet. They will, though. I'll make sure of it." Ronan sat beside her. "Aria, I need to ask you something important. I know we've only been courting for a few months, but I also know what I want, and what I want is you as my mate, my Luna, my partner, in all things." Aria's eyes went wide. "Ronan, I'm not asking for an answer right now. I know you need time, but I want you to think about it. About building a life with me and Liam. About being part of our family. Permanently." He took her scarred hand in his. "I love you, Aria. Not despite your scars or your past, but with all of it. You're exactly who I want by my side." Tears spilled down Aria's cheeks. "I love you too. And Liam, I've loved you both for months now. I was just too afraid to say it, then say yes. Not today, but someday. Let me make you mine." Before Aria could respond, Liam tugged on her sleeve. "Aria, stay?" he asked, his voice clear despite the lingering roughness from years of disuse. "Stay forever." Aria looked at the boy she'd come to love like her own son. then at the man who'd somehow healed her wounded heart just by believing she was worth loving. She thought about the life they were offering, not just security or status, but genuine belonging, family, love. "Yes," she whispered, "I'll stay forever." Liam cheered and threw his arms around her neck. Over his head, Arya met Ronan's eyes and saw such joy there that her remaining fears melted away. This was right. This was home. The formal mating ceremony took place 3 months later. The council had insisted on the delay, wanting to ensure this wasn't a rash decision. But every day of those 3 months only strengthened Ronan's certainty that Arya was meant to be his. The pack gathered in the great hall, filling every available space. Some came to support their alpha's choice. Others came out of curiosity or skepticism. But everyone came because this was historic. An alpha mating an omega, elevating her to Luna, despite council opposition. Arya wore a simple dress in pack colors, her scars on full display. She refused to hide them, refused to pretend she was anything other than what she was. A survivor who'd been broken and had put herself back together stronger. When she walked down the aisle toward Ronan, she held her head high. Some wolves whispered, some stared, but she kept her eyes on Ronan and Liam, who stood together at the altar, waiting for her, her family. The ceremony was traditional, with Ronan marking her as his mate, and Arya marking him in return. The bond snapped into place between them, a connection deeper than words, more fundamental than law. Through it, she felt his love, fierce and unwavering, his pride in her courage, his determination to protect her, always. When it was done, Ronan turned to face the pack. "I present to you Luna Arya, my mate and your Luna. She has my complete trust and faith. I expect her to be treated with the respect and honor her position demands." The pack howled their acceptance, the sound echoing through the hall. Not all of them meant it. Arya could see skepticism on some faces, resentment on others, but enough voices joined the howl to make it genuine. Liam, who'd been standing to the side, ran forward and hugged Arya's legs. "Mama," he said clearly, looking up at her with adoration. It was the first time he'd called her that, though he'd been dancing around it for weeks. Arya picked him up, holding him close. "Yes, baby, I'm your mama now forever." The pack saw it, saw the love between the new Luna and the young heir, saw how Liam clung to her like she was his entire world. And some of the skeptics softened because whatever else they might think about an Omega Luna, they couldn't deny that she'd saved their future alpha. The celebration that followed was grand, but Arya barely remembered it. She was too focused on Ronan's hand in hers, on Liam's excited chatter, on the bond humming between her and her new mate. This was real. This was happening. She was Luna now, protected and cherished, and finally, home. Years passed. Arya proved herself as Luna again and again, using her empathy and understanding of wounded souls to improve the pack's mental health services, to create safe spaces for traumatized wolves, to ensure no one suffered alone the way she and Liam once had. The council members who opposed her mating gradually came around, seeing her dedication and the positive changes she brought. Even Margaret eventually admitted grudgingly that perhaps an Omega Luna wasn't such a terrible thing after all. Liam grew into a confident, compassionate young wolf who spoke openly about his trauma and his healing, helping other young wolves understand that being broken didn't mean being worthless. He became a voice for acceptance and understanding, and everyone knew he'd learned those values from his mother. Arya and Ronan had more pups. 3 of them, each clear's throat, one different but loved. And through it all, Arya never forgot where she'd come from. never forgot what it felt like to be dismissed as lesser, to be hurt and cast aside. She used those memories to fuel her work, to ensure no wolf in her pack ever felt as alone as she once had. But sometimes on quiet evenings she and Ronan would sit in the garden where it had all begun, where a feral, frightened boy had first trusted a scarred Omega, where healing had started for both of them. "Do you ever regret it?" Ronan asked one such evening, his arm around her waist. "Taking on Liam when he was at his worst, taking on me and all the complications that came with mating an alpha." Arya thought about the journey that had brought her here. The pain of her past, yes, but also the joy of her present. The boy who'd been too scared to trust, now a young man who trusted deeply. The alpha who'd been drowning in grief, now her devoted mate and partner. "Not once," she said firmly, "not ever. Even when the council was horrible to you, even then, because every hard moment led me here, to this life with you and our pups, to being Luna, to helping others the way I needed help once." She turned in his arms to face him. "My scars will always be part of me. But now they're part of a bigger story, one where I went from broken to whole, from Omega to Luna, from alone to surrounded by family." Ronan kissed her gently. "You were never broken. You were wounded, yes, but broken things can't heal themselves the way you did. Broken things can't help other broken. Things become whole. You were always strong, Arya. You just needed someone to remind you." "We reminded each other," Arya corrected. "You and Liam both. You showed me I was worth loving, and I showed you that healing was possible. We saved each other. We did." Ronan agreed. He pulled her closer and they sat together as the sun set over the garden, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Liam found them there an hour later, now 17 and nearly grown, but still seeking his parents' presence when the world felt overwhelming. "Can I join you?" he asked, though he was already settling on Arya's other side. "Always," Arya said, making room for him. They sat together, Alpha, Luna, and Air, and watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky. A family built from pain and patience, from trust hard won and love freely given. "Tell me the story," Liam said, as he had 100 times before. "About the first day when you made me feel safe." Arya smiled and began the tale he never tired of hearing. About a boy who'd been so frightened he could only communicate through violence. About an Omega who'd understood his pain because she carried her own. About a father who'd been willing to try anything to save his son. About how sometimes the most broken people find each other and in the finding become whole. Ronan listened to his mate's voice weaving the familiar story, watched his son's face relax into contentment, and felt gratitude wash through him. For the Omega who'd walked into his life and transformed everything. For the second chance at family and happiness. For the proof that love could heal even the deepest wounds. His son had been feral, biting everyone who came near, until a scarred Omega had shown him that some people were safe, that some hands offered comfort instead of pain, that healing was possible if you were brave enough to try. And in teaching Liam that Arya had taught it to Ronan too, had shown him that he could love again, could open his heart without fear of it being destroyed, could build a new family from the ashes of the old. The moon rose full and bright over the garden, illuminating 3 figures sitting close together. A family that shouldn't have worked, Alpha and Omega, broken boy and wounded woman, but somehow did, somehow became exactly what each of them needed. And in the palace beyond, other families slept peacefully, protected by an Alpha who understood loss and a Luna who understood pain. led by wolves who knew that strength came in many forms, that healing was always possible, and that sometimes the most important thing you could do was offer a frightened creature a safe place to rest. Liam had been that frightened creature once, but now, nestled between his parents, he was simply a beloved son, safe, whole, and home, just as it should.